All right, welcome everybody to the third AMA for Rad Reads, and I just wanted to kick off by always just really expressing my gratitude for your guys' support, your kind words, your encouragement, financial contributions. This is something I take tremendous pride in, and I'm just honored that you guys would take the time out of your days to be here with me. So thank you for that. I will say that we're seeing some insane growth on the AMAs. The first one was one person, two people. The second one was four, and the third one was six. So I guess for those of you who are in the content business, you know that it is no joke when you literally are starting from ground zero and building up audiences one individual person at a time. So today I wanted to share with you just a high-level overview on how I think about digital revenue, how I think about digital products, but most importantly, how simple it is. And again, I've got no axe to grind here. I've got no stake in the game other than it would bring me no greater joy for you to leave this conversation and say to yourself, like, oh, wow, I could actually get a storefront up and running and start selling something within, 8 steps, probably like an hour or two. That is exciting to me, and I hope you find it as exciting as I do. So let's kick in. Oops. Okay, so here is one of the, my mouse is off. Sorry, my mouse was getting all screwed up. Start over. All right, so here are some of life's greatest feelings. Learning how to ride a bike, graduating college, getting married, having a kid. But there's one that you may not know about, and it's really exciting, and I want to share it with you. And it is the feeling of $100 bills just entering your Gmail inbox. And this is a screenshot from my first digital product, my first course from a couple months ago. And don't let, while it is extremely exciting to see that screen, it was about like 100 hours of work. So the per hour rate wasn't great, but it was still an incredible feeling to know that something that you had created would just spit out, would spit out revenue. So my first product launch was an online course it was actually just a Zoom video that I recorded that was about the pursuit of financial independence, or an alternative take on financial independence. And the metrics for that was about 114 or so buyers. It's actually crept up a little bit more since I wrote this post, for about $10,000. And like I said, it was about 100 hours of work. So the economics at that moment were not great, but it taught me a lot about what it means to do this and how accessible it is to all of us. So here's why I love creating digital products. The first is I genuinely think that it forces you to think about different tools that are out there. And again, they might be outside of the scope of your 9-to-5 job or your daily career. And I think that so many of these tools are actually on, I wouldn't say the bleeding edge of technology, but they're outside the realm of, everyday usage of technology, but they're accessible and easy to use. It's a mechanism to express yourself creatively, and you get to leverage your most precious asset, which is yourself and your time and your ideas. So this is what I would love to share with you guys today. And most importantly, it's if you have an internet connection, yes, you probably need $50 of disposable income to sign up to the various services, but it's pretty much accessible to anyone, at least on this call. And it's really, really easy. So it is at the crux of it all these different tools, the same way we use Dropbox and Gmail and Google Suite and Notion. It is different cloud and web-based components that you could string together to make really, really powerful products and experiences. So I don't know if you know, but Kylie Jenner's business, Kylie Cosmetics, has 8 employees and I think $200 million in sales. And it's built off of one of these platforms. It's more specific than what we'll talk about today, but it's Shopify, which is basically a turnkey e-commerce solution to selling physical products. We're talking digital today, but I just wanted to share that as proof. I mean, obviously she's a Jenner, so she's got a built-in audience, but proof that how much scale and leverage is available in many of these platforms. And of course, I needed to pop in a picture of Travis Scott because I like him as a rapper. So here's my gift to you. I want to show you in this example what tools you can use, because I'd like to surface them for you. Some of you may or may not know about these different tools. I want to show you how you can combine them, and then I want to talk about how you could promote them. And so when it comes to, and here's an extra incentive. If you guys do create a digital product, I will buy the first 20. So there's 8 of you, so I'll buy every single one of them. And I will be your first customer and your early adopter. So what is it that you actually need? And I thought about it as like 3 concentric circles. The first is obviously you need a product. And this is, I'm going to talk about this today, but this is actually probably the hardest part, is like what's the idea? And today I'm going to talk much more about the functional elements of it, is like, how do you sell it? How do you get people to buy it? How do you transact? Things like that. But you do need a product. And we'll talk about some examples. You need some kind of platform where it showcases your product, and where people can go see it, learn about it, and ultimately buy it. And then you need clients. Some people might refer to this as an audience. And so really today, we're going to spend most of the time in the green circle, but we'll touch on the red and the purple as well. And so these different circles can be translated into different tools. So a platform is basically a website, a way to take payments. So the website we're going to talk about, the website maker we're going to talk about is Card. Stripe is a payment processor, and Namecheap is just a domain, a place to buy a domain name, which you would probably need for some of the deeper integrations down the road. The next is you got to have clients. You got to find them, which is where the social media comes in, and then you need to communicate with them, which is where email comes in its probably the most basic method of communication. And then you need a product, and again, there could be entire courses dedicated to what's a product, but I want you to think really simply. I want you to think about something that you know a lot about or know more about than the average person, something that you're passionate about, and just try to find a way to convert that knowledge into something digital. And it could be an ebook, a PDF. I know there's a lot of people actually make money selling templates for PowerPoint, Keynote, Excel. I know of someone who made a lot of money selling workout templates on Excel. And so you'd be surprised. And again, we're talking something under $10 as kind of just to get you guys started. Like down the road, sure, you could make beautiful private videos. Other ideas could be guides about your city, guides about restaurants. Again, things that you're passionate about, things that you enjoy writing about. And it's going to be wrapped. It could be as simple as giving someone access to a PDF or a Google document once they pay for it. So I'm going to take you through the different steps. Now, I'm not going to walk you physically through every step, but I'm going to show you the component pieces so that you can do this yourself. And so the first step would be to buy a domain. Again, I use Namecheap. I think they're the cheapest, but Google Domains is great. I would stay away from GoDaddy. But again, I think that, and people always ask me, well, what domain name should I buy? And, I bought radreads.co. I love, Radreads 4 or 5 years ago, started as an email newsletter. There was reading involved. I like it. But there's times when I wish it wasn't so specific, specifically with the word reads in it, in that I didn't want to, like, is it the Rad Reads podcast? Like, that sounds like a little bit off. When I do a financial course, is that, what does that have to do with Rad Reads? So the flip side is what most people do. And again, I don't know if I would have done this knowing what I know, but I think the safest bet is to buy some version of your name. And that gives you the flexibility to move around different ideas. It gives you a home, like your name's never going to change. So I think that that's a good starting point. And if you could easily get these different domains for like under $10 a year. So the next thing, next place, I see that there's a question, but I'm going to just hold off to just go through the video. Keep banging on that chat button if it's really important, like you guys can't hear or something. The next step is to go to a site builder. This is no different than Squarespace or Weebly or Wix. I like card.co. It is freaking beautiful. It's really easy to use, and it's insanely cheap. It's $9 a year for their pro version. It's free for their trial version, and their sites are totally stunning. And you can hook up your domain that you just bought. So if you bought khe.co, you can hook that up pretty easily, and then you can integrate it, as you'll see, with other elements that we'll talk about. Once you do that, like I said, you link your domain to card.co. This, again, it's going to be a little bit technical, but there's no coding involved. Like, there's a lot of documentation on how to do this. I pasted in the screen. I can share these screens with you. But I think one thing to know as you start stitching all these pieces together is that you're going to run into issues, and you'd be amazed or I'm always amazed at the customer support on these different platforms. Like, they will help you solve your problem. And so you just got to ask, and it takes a little bit of time, but they're pretty responsive. I know for card.co, I've had a bunch of issues with them. It's a 1-person or 2-person company. The actual founder just responds to you out of his Gmail. So this just gives you, it's not these like kind of warehouses, in India or in some far country taking care of the customer service requests. And you can always Slack me and I'll try to help you out. Next, we want to open a Stripe account. And Stripe is basically like PayPal on steroids. The thing that makes it different than PayPal is that it gives you what's called an API, which basically lets card.co or all these other providers talk to Stripe, talk to your bank account on Stripe almost seamlessly. I mean, I am blown away by Stripe. I invoice clients through Stripe. It is so clean. It is so easy to use. It's extremely safe in internet terms. So yeah, you open a Stripe account. You will have to link in a bank account. You probably will have to put some tax information and so on. But again, this should take like less than 5 minutes. Step 5, I want you to then go back to your card site. Pick a template that is, again, very straightforward. Introduce yourself, introduce your product, maybe give a few excerpts, pictures, examples. Client testimonial, again, it's like Squarespace. It's very easy to use. And that way you will have a place, you'll have a website like khe.co that you can start emailing to people. You can start, putting in your email signature. You can tweet it at people. You can put in your LinkedIn bio, etc. And so people will slowly start to find, the same way there's 8 people in this AMA, like there were 2 4 months ago. People will find it. And then over time, it will grow. So then step 6, this is probably the second most technical task, but this will involve linking Stripe to your card account. And the way this is done is, again, there's tons of documentation on this, but the way this is done is that there is something called an API key, which is basically a secret code that lets 2 apps talk to one another. And so once you submit information from card, it gets passed over into Stripe. And so once you add Stripe on the card site, it will be called a widget. Once you go in, you can see on the screen, it says Stripe checkout. You'll have to play around a little bit with the fields, but again, the documentation is pretty legit. And if you have questions, you can email either companies. People have written a bazillion blog posts on this stuff, and you can always reach out to me. then let's see. So then we'll go to step 7, where there is a tool called Zapier, which I basically think of it as the internet's glue, and it combines when there's not a natural integration between a few different services. So, for example, Stripe talks directly to Card, but sometimes Stripe might not talk directly to. I'm sorry, Card might not talk directly to, let's say, Mailchimp, but it can talk to Google Sheets, and then you can kind of piece them together so that ultimately Card can talk to Mailchimp via the interlocutor of Google Sheets. And this is probably, again, on the slightly more technical side of, not technical, more advanced side of things, but it is, I mean, so much of my workflow is powered by Zapier, linking my Slack channel to my Teachable account, to my website, to WordPress. It is really the glue that brings all of this together. And then lastly, step 8, what you want to do is to basically, once someone hits the buy button on your Card site, you want to send them a message thanking them, and with your product, right, which would be like a Dropbox link or an attachment. Let's not worry about digital rights management at this point, but there are tools that can do this. And then you can customize your email. Like, you can grab fields that show the person's name. And so again, when someone buys something on Card, it will tell Stripe that you have a buyer, because Stripe will process the payment. And then through Zapier, it will then tell Google Gmail to send a message that you kind of wrote in advance to deliver your product. And so those are the 8 steps. I would say that as you become more advanced in this, you can find turnkey solutions for your niche. So the product that I just described, the experience that I just described, you can use a service called Gumroad, which will basically do everything I just described. I wanted to walk you through the steps so that you could see how simple it is, but Gumroad is actually even easier. You just need one thing, a Gumroad account and page. I've been spending a lot of time building online courses on Teachable, which is incredible. I still integrate Teachable with like Mailchimp and my website and my landing pages. But again, that's more advanced. And then Shopify, I have no experience with Shopify, but it's the same concept for selling physical products. So last slide, to recap, I just really hope that you get an understanding of the tools. And then when you know what tools are available, it gives you a much better perspective to seize and spot the opportunities. And we didn't talk about the 2 bigger challenges. We could talk about this as part of the Q&A. What's your idea and who's your audience, right? Developing an audience is probably the most difficult of the 3 rings, and just takes a lot of time. But again, the purpose of this is to start small and to get the ball and momentum going. And then, without a doubt, like, this shit gets messy. It's not clean. There's a lot of different people a lot of different tools talking to one another. You may get frustrated. You will get frustrated. But at the end of the day, everyone is incentivized for you to have a good experience, because it just means you continue to use their products more. So with that, I want to stop the screen share and jump into the Q&A. And I thank you for listening to my talk. Let me just pause the screen. All right. Any questions?
I have a question.
Go for it.
I would love it if you could talk a little bit about maybe how you've iterated on the product development side. Like, I think about Teachable as like the more complicated end of the spectrum when it comes to like a product development. And like, are there ways that you've tested the idea in a smaller way, like with a PDF or a one-off video, and then just to test if there's appetite for the concept, and then built it into something more complex?
I mean, that I have like goosebumps because that's just like, it's just a phenomenal question. And it's the right question to ask. Um, so let's talk about, we could talk specifically about my course. And the number one advice that I got from creating my course was, do not create a course unless you're sure there's demand for it. And so how did I know that there was demand for it? So my class was about financial independence, the psychology of money, and I knew there was demand for a few reasons. One, I write about it all the time. It's some of my most popular pieces. People ask me questions about it. Companies ask me to speak about it. They pay me. So I know that there's financial demand for the ideas. That doesn't mean that there's financial demand for the digital product. The second, which is related to the first, is that people were paying me for consulting on that topic. So again, there was financial demand for at least my idea space. So the first online course was actually it was just like this. It was a live Zoom. It was 90 minutes long of prepared materials with 30 minutes of Q&A. It shouldn't have taken so long. I think that's where the perfectionist in me came in, was like, I made 100 beautiful slides. Like, I should have just made like 100 crappy slides, because it wasn't about the beauty of the slides. Like, I wasn't going to reuse it, but I couldn't help myself. Like, sometimes like the passion for my craft like gets the best of me. But that's the reason why it was a one-off recording. It was live. There were slides. They were too nice. And there was no expectation that I would resell it like as a follow-on product. So occasionally people have been, there are people buying it still. It's like one per week. And I'm actually thinking of now re-recording the whole thing, making it a little bit better, maybe increasing the price by adding some additional features to it. But 115 people bought it. Like, to me, like, that's a sign of demand for like a talk, like not even like there's no curriculum or anything like that. So, so how can you go about testing it? I mean, I think a really easy way is to write about whatever the thing is constantly, or create content, writing videos, pictures, tweets. You will see from the level of engagement whether people care. Then the second thing I would say is it's called, I'm just going to make notes in the chat channel, Tripwire. It's called a Tripwire product, which is like something really, really cheap, just to like, it's like a premium blog post, for example, or maybe a collection of 5. And that's something that like is, under $20 because it's a completely different experience for someone to like read your blog post and to open their wallet and like enter their credit card in it. And so I think that finding that right Tripwire product, I do think if you're sharing knowledge or wisdom or expertise, doing it with like a live video chat, a private live video chat is probably the safest way to go, because you don't have to worry about the production quality, and you just have to worry about the idea space. And I think the other thing you'll notice, and this is not directly related to your question, Megan, but the thing that you'll notice in doing all this, and this was kind of like my challenge, my like implicit challenge to you, is that there's so many little tiny steps that like you become exposed to. Like, what subject line do you use, right? Like, you then realize like, oh, I got to be a copywriter too. Like, oh, like, I'm a good writer, but I don't write good marketing copy. That's like a different style of writing, where it's like, get this thing before it goes away and it will like make you like, I just don't write that way. But you need to write at least in that style to get people to buy. So I think that's in my last slide where it says you'll see the opportunities differently, is that once you start, I just have this really fundamentally strong belief that like, once you have, so for example, I now think a lot about digital marketing because I've had to sell something digitally. So now with all that spam email comes in, like trying to sell me junk and crap, I'm like, which headline spoke to me? Which one like tempted me to click? And then right away, I'm like, what was it about that one versus the 99 others that didn't tempt me to click? How can I use that in my own process? And that's something writers talk about all the time, is like, as a writer, you just kind of, your eyes are always open to things to write about, and you just see the world slightly differently. And so that's what's exciting for me to get you guys all started on this. It's not going to make, it's going to take you tons of time. It's not going to make you any money, but just seeing that potential and learning to see differently will be very valuable. Hudson.
Hey, just a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
What do you think about kind of creating a landing page? And so I took a couple different series of courses through Udacity, and they would always create these like false deadlines. Like you kind of knew that they were not really deadlines, but they're it was like, sign up for our fall class of this program, data science, and sign up. And the program starts September 15th, so sign up by then to get into that class. So they kind of created this sense of urgency. What do you think about putting out a kind of like landing page and just collecting information and then trying to convert them later once you have if you have enough interest? And if you don't get enough interest, then you just kind of scrap it and move on.
So that's a very known digital strategy to, like, it's part Eric Ries, part A/B testing, lean startup. So I'll talk about it. I'll talk about my approach to that question. I guess I could try to take elements from that philosophy, but to me personally, it gets away from what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm not trying to just like churn out products that people want to buy. Like, at the end of the day, like there is the artist in me that's like, there are certain things that I'm passionate about that I want to create, and hopefully people will buy them. And so that's kind of like my personal philosophy on that question. Like it can be so, like I have people that, I know friends who create landing pages, and when you hit buy, it takes to like a 404, like your card was not processed, but it actually was, it's actually a fake 404 page. And what they really wanted to know was like, was that person willing to enter their credit card number? That's how intense it is. And again, I don't think that specific example, probably like a little too much on the extreme for me. I will say, like, I might create a class. And so I said it with like my class, as I started to sell it, as I started to promote it, if it didn't cross the threshold of like 10 people, I was just going to give the money back. So I guess you could
create a light product where, you're making a minimal investment of your time and resources into this product. And if it sells well, then you'll go on to the heavier product. If it doesn't, then maybe you don't have the interest.
Exactly.
You're not going to do nothing.
I'm not, well, but I also, in my case, it's a little, well, I might have done nothing. So let's say that I'm selling the Financial Independence Zoom call. So it's the lightweight product. And the day of the call comes and only 6 people, or like it's a week before the call, 6 people have bought it. I might just give the money back. Mm-hmm. So I am kind of doing that approach to like almost by like reverse default. I'm doing, but I am, and I think the other thing that you realize, or I realized, is that creating the course is actually the easy part. Like the hard part is the marketing. I mean, someone once told me for their course that they did, they had a 50-page document of marketing materials, email sequences, landing page copy, blog posts that were supporting it. So a lot of the marketing, and so I guess, so I'm going to launch a Notion course around the end of September. I haven't created the content. It probably will take me a week to create the content. Like I know what it's going to be like in my head, but I'm doing like a crescendo of promotion. Like I'm tweeting about it a lot. I'm writing little blog posts, making videos. In September, I have like 3 dedicated blog posts on Notion that I haven't written yet that are really going to like drive people to the sales page for so 3 weeks. And if those fall flat, then I'll just scrap it.
Okay. And just one other question I had. What about different distribution platforms? Like, it seems like these online courses can be distributed on, 10, 20 different platforms. There's, Udemy and all these other ones.
Yeah.
Do you distribute widely, or do you try to focus, just keep it in-house in your own website?
It's a good question. So when you look at courses specifically, there were kind of 2 eras of products. So the first product was the Udemy and the Skillshare, which was almost like pre-social-ish, which is like, you don't have an audience, so you need our audience. And the economics were very punitive because they brought you the audience. I don't know. I haven't used either of those, but that's like my understanding of it.
The way it is now is if they bring you the audience, you pay a punitive rate, like you said. But
Okay.
If you bring the audience to their site, then you get it's just a small fee.
Got it. Okay. Which is smart. And Teachable kind of takes a different tack. It just assumes you have the audience. I think down the road, I will look at it. Here's where I kind of hit the constraints of being a band of one. It's like, is it worth the extra time to get, maybe if I have a kick-ass course that crushes it on Teachable, that I feel good about the production quality, I would take it to another platform. But I think a lot of things there's probably just a better ROI on my time than that specifically.
Okay.
Ryan, did you want to pop in on, because you have some thoughts on the landing page stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I guess kind of just as like an anecdote, my first course was on Skillshare, which is kind of like similar to Udemy, but it's like a membership model rather than like people purchasing the course. I think max I was maybe making like $10 a month from it. So obviously that's just like a single anecdote, but I definitely think that like the advantage is obviously that they have that built-in audience. So if there's a way you can kind of like capture that audience and kind of like nurture it, I think it's valuable. But I do think kind of like having your own platform, and that's kind of like the direction that I've moved in, and like that's what Kay's doing. You're able to kind of like connect more closely with the people that like are potentially going to buy your product or who like do in the end buy your product than when it is on like one of these platforms. And then with the landing page stuff, I was basically just saying like I do think that is like it's definitely like that's how Buffer got started. Like they did the same thing that you said, where it's like you can go in and put your credit card and they say like, oh, it like doesn't actually exist basically. But I think the challenge there is like, Kay, you said like you were getting feedback that like, financial independence is like something that like people are interested in. And I think kind of having like seeing what those trends are is a little like you're seeing not only that people are interested in it, but you're seeing specifically like how people are talking about it. And I think that's a little more valuable than potentially just like how many folks are signing up. If you're able to kind of like see what people are talking about and like where they're talking about it, I think that can kind of be like equally as valid research, without even having to really go out and build something.
And I would also add that on Skillshare and Udemy, my guess is that like you're almost like playing a Google game. Like how are you going to stick out from the noise? Like if you want to do a class, I've thought about doing a class on OmniFocus. There's like 7 of them already. So I don't even know if someone Googles OmniFocus, which is already not a high volume search, that mine will even fall on the front page of Udemy's results, that it might not even be worth the brain damage. That being said, I would guess they probably don't have much on financial independence. So like if there's an opening, like by all means, I should consider it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a few just thoughts to share with you guys, but
Maybe. So I'd be curious to kind of hear a little more about the launch for the financial independence course. Like, was that kind of largely driven through email?
Mhm.
And then kind of like how that's going to differ from how you're planning to do the Notion course.
Okay, cool. I've just made a note because I walked through the whole product process, but it's fun to talk about. So the first thing is I actually hired a coach to teach me how to do it, and because I have a decent sized audience, but I have zero digital marketing experience. Definitely at the time I had none, and so the way that the way we approached the launch was we spent a lot of time figuring out what the product was going to be. Like, it wasn't guaranteed that it was going to be financial independence. And we had like a list of 15 or so topics. I think one of the topics was, so to me, and I'll tell you all this in private, is that what I really wanted to do was a class on the psychology of money. And his threshold, my coach's threshold, my coach, by the way, his name's Taylor Pearson. You guys might know him from Twitter. His threshold was the alarm clock test. Like, does someone wake up and say, man, I really need to think about, or I really need to change my psychology of money, like the words that you use. And that kind of threw out that idea. But we were able, so that was the first thing. It's like, does it pass the alarm clock test? And the second is like, is it zeitgeisty? Like, are like people talking about the idea right now, like in broad swaths? And so what, FIRE has been and still is kind of very much topic du jour. So we're like, well, how could we like play off of FIRE and still keep the elements of the psychology of money? And so that's why we kind of came up with the Fulfilling Path to Financial Independence, which is, I don't love the title, but it's still like somewhat paradoxical, as a headline writer, as a journalist. Like, I think about, like, it does have like a little bit of a curiosity gap in it where it's like, wait, well, how can you be fulfilled and financially independent? Like, there's a little bit of tension there. And so that was the first step, is like figuring out what the concept was. The second was, once we just decided on the concept, I basically put out a survey that's like, why do you care about this topic? If, what questions do you have? I could dig up the survey, and I sent it to the entire Rad Reads list. And so there were probably like, I don't know, 100 or so responses, dumped it into a word cloud, kind of saw the words. And so this was like part course formation, but this is like, in hindsight, I realized it was way more marketing. It's like, how can I communicate with the audience with like the words that they use themselves to describe the problem? And so that was a really powerful way of doing it. And so that gave me a lot of like marketing copy. It kind of helped me think about like how to like frame the narrative of the course and of the marketing. And so that was like the second step. And then the third step is actually a very simple framework that Taylor has. It was basically, the third step is to create a sales page. And so the sales page, he had a template that he used. I've looked at some up, but it's very much like, it's such a different way to write. It took me a long time. I'll share a sales page. I'll send you guys the template, but basically I wrote a sales page, which was probably 800 words that kind of formed the basis of like all the other marketing, and was the place you actually came to buy the course. Then after we wrote the sales page, he has like a 3 approach, like blog series to like promote the course to his mailing list. And he calls it problem, agitate, solve. So the first is like, you just like write a post that's like, we all have this problem, and it's kind of open-ended, and ideally you have like a visceral reaction to it. I'm trying to think what was my problem is, I think it was something that's like, what does it even mean to be financially independent, right? Because that is kind of a nebulous term. So the first was, it was the golden handcuffs of success. That was the problem. It's like, I'm successful, but I'm not happy. you know. And then agitate was one of my most popular posts of all time, which was the dubious promise of financial independence. And it's like, you want this thing, but let me tell you that this thing's actually not what it's cracked up to be. And so then it's like, you kind of like the problem is like you poke someone with a knife, and the agitation is like you turn the knife. And then solve is like you basically give them a solution. You're like, well, here's how I can help you solve that problem. And that was actually the hardest post to write. It's typically what you do in the solve module. The solve post is like you give away one of your modules for free, basically. And it's kind of like the one he like always uses is like Ramit Sethi has one where it's like, call your cable company and tell them you're going to quit. And then they'll like reduce your rate by like 20%. Like, so like instantly the buyer feels like they've saved 20%, and they like the mental accounting makes them okay with the pay. They see results, yada, yada, yada. So that was like the 3-week sales process kind of leading up to the sale of the course. And that was pretty much, I mean, it was a lot of work, but there was no like Twitter strategy, no social, no Instagram strategy, nothing else. I'll pause there and I'll talk about how I'm thinking about Notion, but first I'll open it up to questions on that specifically. Okay. So then on Notion now, so Notion is an interesting one too. So let's think about the framework, right? Is it zeitgeisty? I think it is. I think it's very zeitgeisty. I'm an early adopter, so like I'm in the trenches. I'm in like the community, and so what I've done is basically try to brand. Brian, you've seen this, like brand myself a Notion expert. And I'm basically going on asking everyone in the world, like, do you need help on Notion? And then like giving them the answer with these like little like 2 to 5 minute videos. So what does that do? One, it helps me identify people's pain points. 2, it's marketing. 3, it gives me material to write about, so it gives me more marketing. 4, it puts me on the radar of people. Like I think that some people are starting to catch wind that like I care a lot about this. Notion, for example, asked me to be a Notion pro for LA, and they said that they would help me promote my course. So like right there, like that's, and it's such a win for them because I'm out here doing like free marketing for them. You know, so I'm doing all of those things, quietly thinking about the syllabus like in the back of my mind, but I'm not creating the course. And that course will actually be really easy to create, in that it will just be like 15 hours of screen shares, basically, of me like showing you how to do stuff. So it's like production wise, it's going to be super easy. So that's how I've been like planting the seeds, iterating. I think there's an interesting question. It's like, will people pay for it? I have one, and this might be my own confirmation bias, but off of my referral code, 150 people have bought Notion. So again, that's a different value prop than buying my course, but like it does show that like people are opening their wallets as a result of something I may have said. So that's how I'm approaching that. I haven't done any Notion consulting. So like people haven't paid me yet for Notion, which is the one thing, it's where I think I'm probably taking the biggest risk. But to Hudson's point earlier, as I go through the marketing phase in early September, if the demand's not there, I'll just give the money back. And so I have a launch date of around the 28th of September. I have my problem, agitate, solve posts. I've gotten like, I have the ideas like laid out already. I've been working on my sales page. And then now I'm just kind of fucking around with like writing little Notion pieces like on the blog, on the newsletter and things like that, just to see. Also a big difference is since the first course, I've shifted from Mailchimp to ConvertKit. And so I have a much more powerful tagging. I have a much better understanding of who has clicked what. And so like my funnel feels like a little bit tighter. I think like in digital marketing parlance, you would probably have one level up before where you would ask someone to pay for a webinar or something like that, to do something cheaper. But because the cost of creating the Notion course itself is actually not that much time, the marketing is actually much more time consuming. I feel okay starting down the road of the marketing with a combination of just like seeing, like I have people who have clicked Notion articles in Rad Reads is like 50% of the list. So like people care. And then I'm seeing it on Twitter, and I'm seeing it on Slack, and I'm seeing in our Slack group. And Notion itself is just like very buzzy right now.
And so a couple follow-up questions to that. Number one, because I'm also thinking of switching to ConvertKit, have you like found it kind of does everything that you want it to do?
So I am Mailchimp, and many creators can confirm this. Mailchimp is a nightmare for like digital marketing, for like this type of digital marketing. So it's like you read a post, you send a link, like that. Not like it's probably great for like 1-800-Flowers, but it's not good for like this like blog-based marketing. So I have been running dual Mailchimp and ConvertKit for about 2 months now. I haven't switched over the big Saturday list, but all of these other interactions, the AMAs, the book club, the Notion stuff is all kind of a shadow list in ConvertKit that's going really, really, really well. I mean, it is fucking awesome. Like the one hesitation about Mailchimp that I've heard is that ConvertKit's really good for basically tagging. So you could tag off of all these behaviors. Like if you, like for example, at Hudson, if you clicked on a link that said Notion in Mailchimp, I had to export that list and then re-import it with tags in Mailchimp. If you do it in ConvertKit, it will tag you immediately, and then it could drop you into a sequence that's like 3 days later it sends you a video, 4 days later it sends you a coupon code, like 8, and it's so easy. So far I am loving ConvertKit, with the one disclaimer that I haven't ported over the big list, but I actually think that the things that I'm doing with the small lists is more tricky than what I do with the big list. So I'm not. The only thing I'm hesitant is like what will happen with spam filters. Like, will the move cause like my Saturday email to like go back into spam because it's coming from a different DNS?
Yeah, I mean, at least again, this is kind of anecdotal, but I know like maybe 6 months or so ago, it seemed like everyone was moving from Drip to ConvertKit.
Oh, really?
And they were definitely they were improving their open rates for sure.
Cool.
So I think I wouldn't be too concerned about that.
The other thing about ConvertKit is that I've had a personal switch to double down on email. Like, I'm good at email. I'm not good at Twitter. I like to think before I write. But I can crank out lots and lots of emails, and ConvertKit is magical. It's like with just a little bit of configuration, it could quickly tell you like, Brian wants to receive a lot of email, Megan wants to receive very medium, and Hudson only wants a Saturday newsletter. And it's very easy to cater to those 3 groups once it's set up.
Cool. And
I'll
then
send you a referral code.
Yeah, definitely. Jumping back over to the Notion course, I'm interested how you're thinking about, because I think at least like the software itself is not that complex, but because it is kind of like such a blank slate, there's like so much you can do with it. So how are you thinking about kind of the more like tactical, like here's how these tools work, versus more like, this is how I'm like structuring different parts of my workflow and things like that?
It's a great question. So I would first say that in our bubble, Brian, Notion might seem pretty straightforward, but you give it to like a McKinsey consultant or an investment banker, and they're like, what the fuck is this? They've never used Slack. They think Twitter is for like weirdos, like, you know, like a lot of these people don't even have Facebook accounts. So there is an element of the audience, and this is where I do know my audience pretty well. My audience is pretty wide, but there's a high concentration of like 35 to 50-year-olds that are, you know, like I would venture to guess that some on the upper end of the spectrum still have like print out my email to like read it. So that would be the first thing. The second is that it actually makes it easier for the Notion course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the building blocks, but everything is going to be case study built. So you're going to like build something as you learn the building blocks. So I'm not just going to tell you how to use headers and embeds. I'm going to say, we're going to create your personal mission statement, and the embed you're going to use are like the 3 people you love the most. And like, this is why you work. And so it's going to be like a project that I see like culminating into like a dashboard. And again, this is where like the marketer in me sees is like, I can show you a dashboard. Like if I show you this vision of a life dashboard, like who doesn't want that? Right. And it's not like snake oil, because I'm going to teach you how to create it. We're going to build one for you together, which will have a CRM, a to-do list, like financial planning, receipt tracking, meeting notes, like all the things that people like wish was all in one place. So that's how I'm approaching that. And then a side note is I think I'm going to do 2 tiers of pricing. So there's going to be like a basic course, which is just what I just described to you. And then there's going to be a premium add-on where you get like 50 or 25 additional template videos. And again, I'm doing these on Twitter. I just would clean them up, make it like a little more polished. But again, like the thing about the course is like, it's on Twitter, but do you really want to scroll through my like 25 template long tweet storm and like pick out the right fucking link that like, you know, some people will to save the money, but I would say, again, knowing my audience, like half of them aren't even on Twitter. So I'm going to do like a premium add-on where you do that. I'll probably do some things like how to use keyboard shortcuts, how to do, like some design tricks, like again, part marketing, but also part like the more advanced features of Notion. And then I think in that second tier, I'm going to give like consultant, like I could basically do like, again, it's something I'm doing for free already, but if you have a template that you want to build, I'll help you build it. And that might be at a $50 premium to the base level course.
Cool. Yeah, and I mean, I think one thing to hit on like as far as marketing digital products is like, I know that like something that I still struggle with is like, if I put all of this good stuff out online, like why would someone want to like go through the course? But I think that's the best marketing of it. And it's hard to kind of like get in that mindset, but you're not going to like give away too much information. Like that's how you're going to build an audience for like what you're eventually going to like sell it to or whatever.
Totally. And you watch the people that do this well, right? Like Ramit Sethi and Paul Jarvis, like it's almost like, and I think I don't fall in the camp of doing it well, but I fall in the camp that I've done this. So I've written so much stuff that it would actually just be physically challenging to find it all, like across the different platforms. So like what you're doing with the course is you're saying like, you're like wrapping it in a beautiful box and saying like, here it is. And then you're taking someone on the narrative arc on like how to go about doing it. So like, yes, the hardcore is that like know Notion well, like I would never take my course because I know it too well. But I know where to find like that, like, oh, I got a question on formulas, I go to this place, you know. But I think everyone else wants that like packaging. And I think this is where Teachable is incredible. It's a really awesome experience to take a course through Teachable. I mean, they've done a really good job as a platform. And the other thing, Brian, on this point, this is something that's taken me a long time to really appreciate, is that there's so much, even like my super fans like miss 40% of my posts because there's just so much noise. So much noise from me personally, so much noise from everyone else. People's lives take over. I'm always amazed because I do know who my super fans are. And this is like a perfect example. Like you asked me the question, and maybe I'm being presumptuous that you're a super fan, but you asked me a question about the product launch. I was like, I literally wrote an entire blog post, walked every single step, and it's free on the internet. And either you read it and you don't remember, or chances are you just didn't see it.
Yeah, I don't think I have, but yeah, that's that's a great case study for sure.
I'd love to hear Claire or Megan, just like where your head's at in this whole journey, like why you're here, and that can help me think about how I could better help you.
Sure, I'll start. Actually, Claire's my wife. It's right here, and it's the kids are in bed, so we're both kind of new to this. My wife's in the healthcare profession, and so she's looking at options to market her skill set and what she does. And so we've been following you for a few years now. So this was just a good way to sort of get up to speed. And we've looked at Teachable, and we've looked at all the way to Shopify, but this has been helpful because just getting into the details and the process has actually been, it's been very helpful just to kind of understand the different steps. And so thank you. That was really good.
Thanks. I'm sorry, what did you say your name was?
Oh, sorry. My name is Vivek.
Vivek. Awesome. Thank you, Vivek. And thank your wife for multiple years of support.
Yeah.
So I'm probably the newest person to you. I heard your interview on Zigzag like just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so just started following you from there and signed up for your newsletter. I've just been trying to make more time for pursuing kind of my own product development outside of my day job, which right now takes up more of my time than I want it to. So from your interview, like I've really been working on, how do I balance the time I spend on my day job, which I love, but I also want to pursue my own business and kind of balancing out my family time as well. So I'm kind of in that, I'm like your before picture on your, I'm still living the before picture.
Yeah.
Life. And I think too, part of the reason I asked you that question at the beginning is I think I often, like you mentioned, I spent too much time on these slides, like 100 beautiful slides. I tend to kind of go to that place when I'm producing a talk or as I'm thinking about a course. And so I think I have to really force myself to say, like, how can I test small increments of like, what is there an appetite for people to hear from me about? What is it that I have expertise on? And like, what would people pay for? And just experiment more with it instead of thinking like, oh, well, I have to create a whole Teachable course and invest, a bunch of time in it. Like, how can I just test little ideas? So this has been really helpful for me in just thinking about how I can iterate on some ideas quickly.
Cool. Awesome. And I would say, the great thing about these AMAs is in general, I feel very comfortable, like, sharing what's behind the scenes. To me, this AMA, part of it is like, is there an appetite for a course on this? And that's part of this. I mean, it's not, it's not misintended or anything. It's just, this is like, Brian and I were talking about, like the different conversations, you really start to like get a feel, like, how many people sign up, and then how many people will watch the video. And right there, if it's like 30, you're like, wah, wah, next, And again, as the artist, I really do feel passionate about this, but maybe it's not enough to be a course, and it's just something that I just do for fun.
I think, Kay, I would say that, what you said about agitation, I feel like Rad Reads for me has been, in a good way, like a constant agitation, in that I read it every weekend. Sometimes I'll miss it, but I'll almost always catch up. And there's so many things where I read and I'm just like, yeah, like that's I have to follow up on that. But you just keep bringing it out, and you keep showing that even someone who's not as technical can combine all of these things now into something bigger.
Yeah.
And you keep putting in the head of the reader that like you could do this, just
Yeah.
forget about it. And every week you're every couple of weeks it's coming up, and at some point you're like, well, I have to just do this. This is ridiculous, because you could be very overwhelmed by even just choosing a landing page. Like you said, okay, card. I'm going to go with card if I do the landing page, right? But when you're looking at it, you're like, oh my God, there's like 20 different options. Which one do I choose? Am I going to make the wrong choice and then I'm going to waste all my time? You just got to jump in and do it. And I think this has been great. Like your whole effort has been really great for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Those are some kind words. I always say I like when I sit down to write something, I always say I want to leave people slightly off center, but not too off center that they don't that they start to go into self-doubt and start hating themselves. So it sounds like I've been doing a good job of it. But Vivek and Megan and all of you, I think even before the product, I could not be a bigger fan of it really comes down to audience building, right? Because this was, as I was putting these slides together, I was like, this is kind of a trick, because this is actually setting up a card page, and that's the easy part. The hard part is what are you going to sell and who's going to buy it? And so to some extent, and this is truly accidental discovery on my part, was I built the audience well before I really only sold half of one product, right? This webinar. And I've been building the audience since 2014. So it's been 5 years. And now I'm at this point, and again, a lot has happened in 5 years. So now I'm at this point where, and I did a video, I think I shared my digital revenue is under 20 grand, 25 grand, well below my living expenses. But I do a lot of consulting and coaching and speaking, and that's the high risk, the high dollar money, non-scalable. But it only feels like now that I've kind of tipped into this point where I actually don't want to just make, I know a lot of people want to just make digital revenue so they could sit on the beach. I live on the beach, so I'm good with that. But I actually love, I don't want to just push buttons and make money. I want to talk to people. I want to have human relationships, in person, physically. But I would say to all of you, hands down, what has expanded the surface of my own luck is by putting myself out there every week. That's how I land on the Zigzag fucking podcast. If I look at the guests that they've had and who they had fucking the founder of Craigslist on, and it's K.E. working out of his basement in Manhattan Beach. And it's because of every single week showing up and trying to add value into people's lives. That is forget everything I just said on this video conference. If you take away one thing, how can you show up on a weekly? And it has to be weekly, because monthly is just not enough reps. And biweekly is just weird. You need to get into people's rhythms. And how can you show up weekly, pretty much every week, in a way that adds value to someone else's life, that is aligned with something that you're passionate or curious about? And that thing doesn't have to change. That thing doesn't have to be static. If you look at, Hudson's probably the longest follower of Rad Reads of the people on this call. When Rad Reads started, it was all about AI and fintech, because I thought I was going to be an AI and fintech founder. And then the second year was a lot about gender equality and just leveling the playing field and mission-driven investing, because I thought I was going to be a mission-driven investor. And the third year was all, it was a lot about death and this why are we so afraid, uncomfortable introspection and stuff that I still feel very deeply about. But it was almost too hard to turn any of that into people were just I'm sick of hearing you rant about mortality. Can you liven it up a little bit? And then the fourth year, things really started to click with this psychology of money stuff where it's kind of like taking from my old life. There was the zeitgeist of fire kind of hitting. And then the audience of mine that tended to be like more successful, that had these financial questions. And then now it's just kind of like where it goes. Just so you guys know, my next slate of classes. So I'm going to try to launch a class every 2 to 3 months. The Notion class is next, just because it just kind of came out of me. The following class is going to be the building blocks to personal investing. And this is one, again, it's like where conversations with people, they're like, "Kay, like you have done all these things like Roth IRAs and 529 plans. And like, I'm scared to like put $1 into the market." And so there's like such a knowledge gap, an expertise gap that's aligned with something that I'm so passionate about as a means of self-actualization. Because all Rad Reads is, in my opinion, is like giving people the tools to be better versions of themselves. And that could be like the next to-do list. It could be investing your money better, or it could be like learning how to no code, or it could be like being a better partner in your relationship, like all of the above. But again, it's taken 5 years to get to the point that that's even in the realm of possibility. Because I didn't even know it myself. Like I didn't know myself that I cared about all these things, right? So I'm like taking you along on my journey, and I'm humble that you guys are like down for that. But I would like, seriously, the one takeaway would be like, what's something you could do every week that could take you under 2 hours that can add value to someone else's life, like that. And if you can do that, all this other stuff will fall into place.
That's a good mic drop to end on right there.
Awesome. I was like, now I feel like a motivational speaker. So I want to thank you all so much. I'm serious. Like, email me, text me, Slack me, tweet it. Like, I will respond to everyone. That's the joy of like when 6 people sign up to something, you can say that. A few of you are not in our Slack group. Like, it's really starting to gain its sea legs thanks to people like Brian. And the one thing I always ask is if you could take tomorrow's or Saturday's newsletter and just like forward it to 2 to 3 friends. That is the best way for new people to find out about it. And I thank you all for your time and your support and your patronage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.